Hello, my name is Christian and welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk about games in gross detail. The following video will contain spoilers for the entirety of Xenoblade Chronicles. If you wish to not be spoiled, it might be a good idea to turn back now. Sometimes I think about the flexible nature of the medium of games and realize just how lucky I am to have experienced the adventures that I have. I believe that ultimately every player can take away a multitude of different meanings from any given game, but personally, the ones that have always stuck with me are ones that give me a reason to remember them. The power of video games to transport me to a faraway land with characters working toward a goal has always been a fantastic escape for me from the stresses of the real world. I know the bare bones idea of video games as escapism is an inherently simple notion, but seriously, looking at a game in retrospect many years after your initial playthrough and still recalling all the highs and lows of your journey is a feeling I never get tired of. I feel like in most videos, this would be the part where I would have said, Xenoblade Chronicles sucked me in right away and I remembered everything about the game for years to come. However, this didn't happen. Xenoblade on the Wii was a game I played when I was much younger, but as the years passed on, I found myself slowly forgetting everything that made the game so special. I remembered portions of the game for sure in bits and pieces, but as I grew older, I lacked the insight of the bigger picture. Now, fast forward nearly 8 years later to the release of Xenoblade Chronicles on the Switch, and it feels as if my memory of the original game has been replaced by an empty blank space. A blank space that I never knew I had in me until I re-watched the opening cutscene of Xenoblade Chronicles in all of its newfound HD glory. I was inspired once again as Shulk narrates the conflict between the two massive titans, the Mechonis and the Bionis, and a spark in my brain seems to occur, almost as if I had seen a vision for myself. Everything made sense, it all came together. As I played through the game once again, all the stray puzzle pieces that were once scattered inside my brain shuffled together to create the bigger picture of what I had been missing all this time. The world of Xenoblade Chronicles may have been locked away somewhere deep in my brain, but I had finally found the key to reveal everything that I had forgotten. And once again, I became infatuated, immersed, and obsessed with the sprawling landscapes of the Bionis and the Mechonis. Even though I had changed so much as the years passed, the world and characters of Xenoblade hadn't, and that's exactly how I wanted it to stay. Seriously though, despite my long drawn out anecdote, the world of Xenoblade Chronicles is still genuinely mesmerizing. The first cutscene establishes not only how unorthodox the world of the game is, but also sets up the main conflict of the game before it even has any story relevance. The player is shown that Bionis and Mechonis once fought, but we aren't shown how the byproduct of this conflict affects our characters in the present, at least not yet. In fact, Xenoblade's first attempt to invest the player in his world comes in the form of a very traditional JRPG opening in which we follow Shulk, a young wholesome scientist, Reyn, his lovable and strong right-hand man, and Fiora, an upbeat girl who undoubtedly shares romantic feelings with Shulk. Even very early on, the dynamics and characteristics of each character shine through in the dialogue. Something that's interesting about the opening of Xenoblade Chronicles is that it makes it a very clear point to show that Shulk and his friends lead a fairly sheltered life in Colony 9. Other than Shulk's Monado research, Shulk's life appears unambitious and kind of mundane. The colony feels like it is a very small place that holds little impact on the Bionis at large, and when the Mechon invade to devour civilians and Fiora is murdered, the sheltered and naive worldview Shulk once had is horrifyingly challenged. Sure, Shulk's adventures start with the goal of revenge in mind, but in this moment, Shulk recognizes how insignificant he really is. Even though Shulk and Reyn ultimately leave Colony 9 to pursue their goals of vengeance, the massacre of their hometown is a wake-up call for them. The world that they live in is much bigger and more evil than they ever could have imagined, and the joyful naivety that Shulk and Reyn carried in the opening hours disappears forever. The world of Xenoblade is dark, unforgiving, and very frightening. The opening hours of Xenoblade set a standard for not only the characters, but their relationship with the world around them. In Xenoblade, none of the decisions the characters make are ever in a vacuum. The goals of the characters are always inherently tied to their further understanding of the world around them. And of course, these decisions lead our characters to locations, and the locations of Xenoblade are nothing short of magical. Literally every location feels like a large playground where ways to explore are almost limitless. The scope of these locations and the unique and intriguing ways you traverse them even justify doing the boring side quests that are mostly just fetch quests. But Xenoblade's world was so mesmerizing, I wanted any excuse to continue to explore every nook and cranny of it. When playing through the game, every time I would find myself in a new location, excitement to prowl it overtook me, as I didn't need the characters to immerse me in the world anymore. I wanted to immerse myself in it. The diversity in the landscapes of Xenoblade are completely inspiring and nothing like anything I've ever seen in a game before, and probably will ever see again. What's most impressive to me is the change between certain places judging on its day and night cycle. Satoral Marsh Day versus Satoral Marsh Night are almost like completely different locations. The game takes the idea of a traditional fantasy setting and stretches it in ways that make the player more interested in the world. It is very hard to do the locations of Xenoblade Chronicles any justice with mere words, but I can say that the expansive nature of these locations is aided by the incentive the game gives the player to explore. Every time you discover a new location, the game shows off its name and gives the player immediate EXP. Each location likely has strong enemies for you to defeat or treasure to find, where your reward is rare resources or armor. The incentive for further exploration is always tugging at you, bringing you in the direction of your next fantastic discovery. The game also doesn't reveal the entire map of an area to you from the get-go. It demands that you travel and explore every location in order for that portion of the map to be uncovered. Again, Xenoblade doesn't hand the spoils of the adventure out to you freely, but rather gives you incentive to find it yourself. Everything I've talked about regarding the world isn't even noting the smaller little details surrounding exploration. One-on-one moments scattered throughout the world in obscure locations serve to flesh out the characters' past, present, and future in meaningful ways, and the musical soundtrack serves to amplify immersion even further, with very impactful tracks that not only reflect the location that the party finds themselves in, but often the characters' emotions themselves. I know music is a strange thing to talk about in a video essay about the immersive powers of a single JRPG, but I really feel like this is something Xenoblade nails far better than nearly any other game I've played. The almost holy sounding vocals of Satoral Marsh Night, the song you're hearing right now, reflects the colorful ambiance and the light of the swamp. The Fallen Arms music sounds somewhat hopeful but also slightly melancholy and troubled, as it depicts Shulk's happiness that Fiora is back with them, but also his concern in realizing that she has become a different being altogether. The techno-synth of Mechonis Field really makes the player feel like they're inside of the corpse of a deceased mechanical titan, with Mechon running around like stray dogs. In fact, the Mechon themselves are the last thing I want to talk about here, or more accurately, how Xenoblade's story is constantly setting up questions for the player and creating subversive and intriguing payoffs. Not only for the characters, but also for the player. What I mean by this is the game's fantastic use of dramatic irony. The audience is constantly shown things that Shulk and the party never get to see, mainly on the side of the Mechon. Still, even with these flashes and scenes that the party is unaware of, the game is very particular about exactly what it wants to let us see. For example, you probably already knew Metalface was Momkar far earlier than it is revealed, but with how meticulously the game built the twist up, it feels completely justifiable and earned. That isn't to say that Xenoblade's main characters don't develop though. Possibly the biggest example of this is of course our lead character, Shulk. In his first encounter with the Mechon, he learns to hate them, and justifiably so. These creatures came out of nowhere and seemingly robbed him of everything he's ever known and everything he's ever loved. And this is how the game justifies the journey. It's a story about a young, but also angry and vengeful person who just so happens to wield the Monado. However, the player is constantly left breadcrumbs of what's to come, allowing them to come to their own conclusions judging on what the party has seen and what they have seen. While we understand Shulk's hateful and shallow ideology, that doesn't mean we don't sympathize with it. Despite this, Shulk's ideology is a living, breathing one. It never stagnates, and as he begins to understand the world around him, so does the player. This, of course, is most important when he realizes what the Face Mechon truly are. They're really people, and in fact, one of them is a person he loves. Once this fact is revealed to him, his ideology begins to expand. It's not as simple as he once thought. This is of course only one example of Shulk's empathetic range as a character, but this range is triggered by the world that surrounds him. And as Shulk traverses both the Bionis and the Mechonis, he learns the truth, and this is what makes him into a better and more full person. In fact, his run-ins around the world with different locations and people are what change him. He's no longer the sheltered person he once was. His relationships with the Nopon, the people of Colony 6, the High Entia, and even the residents of the Mechonis themselves, they all play a part in changing who Shulk is, and by the end of the game, he is completely different than he was at the start. While Xenoblade Chronicles is a fantastic game, on this new playthrough of it, I truly realize how amazing the relationship between the characters and world truly is. The characters themselves are sympathetic, and the world is giant and unlike anything you've ever seen, and the player is never told anything, rather, it is always shown. Everything in Xenoblade works in tandem with each other to create a game that rewards the player in all the right places. And this reward that I was given for my effort consistently pushed me forward. The game is confident not only in its ability to sell you on its world, but literally drag you into it. After replaying it, I have no clue how I didn't remember it so fondly, because Xenoblade Chronicles is video game immersion at its absolute finest. And that's all I have to say today. Thanks a lot for watching my video on Xenoblade Chronicles. If you enjoyed the content, maybe give me a sub, maybe give me a like. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike, let me know what you didn't like about it. So, yeah, when replaying Xenoblade Chronicles, I totally realized just how immersive the world is and how everything kind of all works in tandem with each other. And it's just a fantastic game, so really wanted to talk about it for sure. Hope you guys are doing well with quarantine and all. Just let me know what kind of videos you want next. I can continue the FF7 talk. Just finished The Last of Us 2, have a lot to say about that, so just let me know what you guys want in the comments, and yeah, take it easy, hope you guys are doing well.